Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another show, another episode, another controversy about Pope Leo XIV. The Tradisphere, the so-called traditional Catholics, which I consider myself one, of course, because every Catholic needs to be traditional, needs to hold on to the tradition of the faith and the liturgies and the disciplines and so forth. St. Paul tells us to keep the traditions, whether written or unwritten, in epistle or orally, or by tradition. That's what makes tradition tradition. But because I guess of the PTSD of the Francis pontificate for 12 years, a lot of YouTubers, commentators have become so freaked out that certain words trigger them. They have become like the snowflake wokest left. They get triggered by certain words. They get triggered. And they have been triggered because of words which are a horror to them. Because if you associate them with Francis, they are a horror. But we can't associate every single word on the planet with Jorge Bergoglio. And these words were uttered by none other than our new Holy Father, the new Bishop of Rome, the new Patriarch of the West, the new Vicar of Christ, the new successor of the Prince of the Apostles, the new Supreme Pastor of the Universal Church, Leo XIV. And he uttered these words, in his address to the representatives of other churches and ecclesial communities and other religions on 19 May 2025. And what are these words which made the traditionalists freak out? Well, here they are. These are the trigger words: Synodality, Ecumenism, Fraternity, dialogue. Oh my God. Oh my, where is Leo taking us? Synodality, ecumenism, fraternity, dialogue. These are Francis's words. We've suffered under them for 12 years. Say it ain't so, Leo. Say you're not continuing the Francis pontificate. Of course, I'm just a bit being kind of like, what do you call it? What's the word? Making fun of them. Well, it is, if these words were said by Francis, yeah, you panic. But since they were said by Leo, you don't panic. Why? Because he couches them. He makes them fit into Catholic teaching, into a traditional understanding, into a sane understanding. And I'm going to go through his address, this whole address, because it's a magnificent address. It's an excellent address. It's a Catholic address. Unless you've been so brain damaged by Francis for 12 years that any word will trigger you into a panic mode, into a resistance. We got to resist. We got to be careful of this Leo. We gave him a chance, but he uttered the words synodality and dialogue and fraternity and quoted the Abu Dhabi Declaration and ecumenism. Oh my God. Oh my God, Leo said these words which triggered us. So now we gotta be really on the lookout for we can catch Leo saying something and we can attack him for it, because we're the good Catholics. That's not being good Catholics. That's just being stupid and insane. That's just being like the progressive Catholics. Same thing, like the progressive left, getting triggered for words. And the problem with this is, I'll tell you what it is. A lot of Catholics, if you got a Cardinal Burke, if you got a Cardinal Robert Serra, if you got a Cardinal Gerhard Müller, they would probably say pretty much exactly what Leo XIV is saying. Don't live in this delusion that somehow a pope would have come. He would have said, oh, Francis was a heretic. These are dogmatic errors, they're going to be eliminated. We're going to kill synodality and kill dialogue and kill fraternity. And what else? The environment and ecumenism. No, we're the one and only. We're the greatest of them all. All you good people are going to go to hell. That ain't going to happen. And it would be stupid if a pope would actually attempt to do that so explicitly, so brazenly. He would simply split the church into into 2, 3, 4 parts. He would create immediate animosity amongst the whole planet, all non-Catholics. Even within Catholics, they would have started hating him. Is that the Pope of tradition you would want? No. So that's not what you want. You want a Pope who's, as Leo said, the function of Peter is unity and love, unity and charity, and unity of the church and love by bringing people into that one church. I quoted his previous, watch my previous video on the one or two of the other videos I talked with, his speeches and whatnot, And why is the reason? What's the reason? The logical reason. First of all of us are obsessed with what the Pope said. What did the Pope have for breakfast? Did the Pope go to the toilet today? What do we care? We have treated Catholic Church has treated the Pope as a walking God, as a dictator, as an autocrat, as an absolute monarch whose will is law, which Leo XIII said, no, he isn't, which he repeated what Pope Benedict XVI said, no, he isn't, which was exactly the teaching of Cardinal Ratzinger, which I showed you in the previous video from the First Vatican Council. The Pope isn't an absolute monarch. He's bound. So, but we have, since Vatican I, and there's a book, I just ordered it, and I think Father Z mentioned it, Father Zulsdorf mentioned it a few years back. It's called Vatican I, the Council and the Making of the Ultramontane Church. And it says in the description, as its temporal dominion shrank, the Catholic Church became more Pope-centered than ever. The Church was never that Pope-centered. Oh, the Pope appoints bishops, the Pope's bishops on the whole planet Earth. That never happened in the history. Later, in the late couple of centuries or a bit more, that started happening. Traditionally, the bishops were chosen by the clergy of the diocese of Cologne, Germany. They would choose the clergy of the cathedral would choose their bishop, exactly like it happens in the clergy of Rome. The cardinals would choose their bishop, the Pope. It was universal. The Pope did not interfere in every appointment of every bishop, of every patriarch, no. They did not interfere in the liturgical heritage of every little church, no. But this constant centralization of Christianity, of Catholicism into the person of the Pope is a disaster. The Pope is not the Catholic Church. The Pope is not God himself. The Pope is not a walking oracle. He is a servant of the truth. As actually Pope Leo himself just said in his previous address, which I quoted. He said, I am the servant of your faith. I'm servant of your joy. I'm basically the servant of the faith, the truth. But that's the problem, because the world, the Catholic Church herself, has become accustomed to the Pope is the Church. The Pope is the Church. The Pope is the Church. No, he's not. So, of course, Leo can't come around and say, after a century or more of people being brainwashed, that the Pope is the living God who is an infallible oracle of the truth all the time. If the Pope, goes to the toilet at 9 a.m, then the whole Catholic world has to go to the toilet at 9 a.m. It's almost up to this extent. So, of course, Pope Leo cannot come around and start condemning the previous incarnation of the Catholic Church, which was Francis, Jorge. He can't do that. Impossible. He has to proceed carefully, proceed logically, proceed wisely and prudently into taking themes which are in and of themselves not bad, not evil, but could be actually quite good, and give them and imbue them with the correct Christian Catholic meaning, which does not contradict the faith. So, all you tradies there, don't get so triggered. Don't be snowflakes, as they say. And one last comment before we go into the actual speech. Because in the speech, again, what triggered these so-called traditionalists, these defenders of Christianity, the defenders of the traditional Catholic faith, is that, other than the trigger words of synodality, ecumenism, fraternity, dialogue, what triggered them was Francis quoting from Vatican II, Nostra Aetate. And I'm going to quote that document, and I'm going to quote Lumen Gentium, and I'm going to quote the document on ecumenism, Unitatis Unitatis Redintegratio. So we're going to quote them. But the problem is, he quoted them, of course, for tradies. That's heresy. How can you dare quote Vatican II? But the problem is, Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, Bishop de Castro-Mayer, signed all the documents of Vatican II. Later, Archbishop Lefebvre said, no, I didn't really sign this decree or that decree. But it turns out actually his signature is on all of them. And it is admitted by the Society of St. Pius X. And the problem is, well, as I said, Vatican II is kind of vague. So you can put the spin on it on whatever you like. I recall when they issued the Catechism of the Catholic Church, when was it, 1992, 1990 something, when John Paul II was there. And I recall, I couldn't find it in the intro, but I recall reading Cardinal Ratzinger at the time, head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, Benedict XVI, saying that the Catechism, you can't just take statements out of context. You have to read the Catechism as a whole, as the same as Vatican II. You got to read it as a whole, not just pick and choose certain lines, certain words, and make up your whole doctrine out of it. But that's what progressives and traditionalists do. And I'm going to quote again from, and as I say, I am certain 95%, at least 95% of all Catholics have never, ever, not read just one document. Let's say they haven't never read the whole, all 16 documents or whatever it is of Vatican II. None of them did. They might have picked, one line here, maybe a few paragraphs from a certain document, but they've never, 95%, never, and it goes probably for the traditionalist, I bet you, and you guys can go survey yourselves, that none of them, they just, Vatican II, throw it in the garbage, we don't want to look at it. Did you even read it? Did you read all of it? All documents from the beginning to the end? Have you tried to understand it? And I would say, no. 95%, they say, Father so-and-so said, Vatican II teaches that all religions are good. Okay, that's it, that's evil. But they haven't really read anything. So that's the problem. And I'm going to re-quote a thing which Cardinal Ratzinger in 1988, head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith under John Paul II, said to the Chilean bishops in 1988. And he says this. First of all, he says, we got to defend Vatican II against Monsignor Marcel Lefebvre as a valid council and as binding upon the church. That might trigger you again. Yeah, it's a valid council because it was called by the Pope, John the 23rd, and it's valid ipso facto. That's it. And Marcel Lefebvre himself signed the documents of the council, and binding upon the church. What does binding mean? You're going to see what Cardinal Ratzinger actually means by binding. There is nothing to bind when it defines no doctrine, and that's exactly what Cardinal Ratzinger says. And this quotation actually goes to traditionalists and progressives, fake Catholics. Certainly there's a mentality of narrow views that isolate Vatican II, and probably I would say isolate certain phrases, paragraphs of the council, and which has provoked this opposition to the council. There are many accounts of it which give the impression that from Vatican II onwards everything has been changed, and that what preceded it has no value, or at best has value only in the light of Vatican II. That's actually an accusation against the worshippers of Vatican II, but that's treated as well the same as by traditionalists. Oh yeah, from Vatican II everything is new. So the church is Vatican II. So if Cardinal Ratzinger continues, the Second Vatican Council has not been treated as part of the entire living tradition of the church, but as an end of tradition. And that's Ghost Traditionalists treated that way. Jorge Bergoglio, Francis treated it that way. And the other progressives, the Spirit of Vatican II crowd, treated it that way. That it is an end of tradition, a start from zero. And then Cardinal Ratzinger continues, the truth is that this particular council, unlike every other ecumenical council, defined no dogma at all. So how is it binding on our consciences? And the council deliberately chose to remain on a modest level. And yet, as a merely pastoral council, not a dogmatic council. Doesn't matter what it calls dogmatic constitution of this and that, but the whole council is a pastoral council. Because even in these dogmatic constitutions, unless it actually specifically tells you to believe something based on the Catholic faith, it's just a pastoral direction. And yet, many treat it as though it had made itself into a sort of super dogma, which takes away the importance of all the rest. And as I recall, I reviewed this document previously. Go read it yourself. I think Cardinal Ratzinger says in the same address that if we just treat Vatican II as a start from zero, as a super dogma, it erase everything else, then the Vatican II cannot make any sense. It's meaningless. It has to be part of the whole entire tradition of the church. Otherwise, it is indefensible. That's where it comes hermeneutics of continuity of Benedict. So that's the problem. Traditionalists and progressives treat Vatican II as a start from zero, as a super dogma. Oh, Vatican II said, the Muslims worship the one God. Oh, heresy. But I'm going to go through that point, actually. I'm going to show you. It's not, because that's exactly what Muslims themselves say they do. So Vatican II is simply stating the beliefs of the Muslims, the beliefs of the Hindus, the beliefs of the Buddhists. It is stating what they themselves say about their own religions. So now let's go into the address. The address of the Holy Father to representatives of other churches and ecclesial communities. First of all, I'd like to tell you, when he says churches and ecclesial communities, where does this come from? Vatican II actually uses the same phrasing, and Cardinal Ratzinger, or was it Benedict XVI? No, Cardinal Ratzinger and their John Paul II, in a document I can't recall off the top of my head. I have a couple of videos on Vatican II, you should watch them. because I do quote this a lot. And in that document, a clarification of what is a church and what is an ecclesial community. So it is clearly defined. Following St. Ignatius of Antioch, who said, if you don't have bishops, priests, and deacons, you're not a church. St. Ignatius of Antioch said that. So Benedict, Ratzinger, John Paul II, and that document may clarify that we may only call, say, the Eastern Orthodox or the Oriental Orthodox, these apostolic churches, because they are churches. They do have bishops, valid orders, they have valid sacraments, they have the episcopate, the priesthood, and the diaconate, and the minor orders, actually. But we cannot call the communities originating after the Reformation, meaning Protestants, we cannot call them churches because they lack the episcopacy, they lack bishops, priests, deacons, and they lack a lot of the sacraments as well. So so we'll call them ecclesial communities, but not churches in the proper sense of the word. And other religions. So this is address of the Holy Father to representatives of other churches, ecclesial communities, and other religions. Clementine Hall, Monday, 19 May, 2025. It's quite a short address, but it caused heads to explode in the Tradisphere. Dear brothers and sisters, with great joy I extend my cordial greeting to all of you, representatives of the churches and ecclesial communities. That's excellent. Why do you want them to insult them to their face? Oh, you schismatics and heretics. I would think a lot of traditionalists would be loving it. Ooh, Pope Leo just call them schismatics and heretics. Yay. Well, that's what they are, but you don't want to spit in their face when they're coming to visit you, and your intention is, as successor of Peter, as the person of unity of the Church of God, is to bring them to that one unity of that one church. Can't go spitting on their faces. And actually, that's not a Vatican II thing. It's not a modern thing. Look at the Council of Lyon in the 1200s or 1300s, and then the Council of Ferrero, Florence, whatever it was, when they attempted to bring the restored communion amongst the Eastern Orthodox, the Oriental Orthodox, and the Catholic Church. They were writing them with my dear brother bishop. They're treating them as bishops, as brothers in the faith. They're just not treating them as schismatics and heretics. So there's nothing new under the sun here. With great joy, I extend my cordial greetings to all of you, representatives of of churches and other ecclesial communities, as well as other religions. So representatives of other religions who participated in the inaugural celebration of my ministry as Bishop of Rome and successor of Peter. Very clear about who he is, unlike Jorge Bergoglio, who refused to be called successor of Peter. He removed that title from his titles in the 2020 to the 2025 pontifical yearbooks. And then he says, he greets the Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople, Theophilos III, and His Holiness Marhawa III, and to each of you, and I am deeply grateful for your presence and prayers, which are a great comfort and encouragement. And then, of course, he quotes Francis. And quoting Francis is another trigger. It triggers me, honestly, when I hear about anything about Francis. We've suffered 12 years of persecution by the bishop dressed in white, living at a hotel in Vatican City. So I'm just gonna. All right. One of the strong. So of course he has to. Leo's function is to show continuity. He can't be spitting on the grave of Francis, who just died a month ago. He just can't do that. One of the strong emphasis of Pope Francis' pontificate was one of universal fraternity. Again, there's nothing wrong with fraternity. We are called to be brothers. I just actually saw a little video clip of Pius XII talking about dialogue and fraternity, I guess after World War II, and peace among nations. Maybe I'll put the little clip of it. So in this regard, again, as I said in the previous videos, Leo is sanitizing Francis. So he uses good words: fraternity, brotherhood. Is that a bad thing? No, it's a very good thing. Doesn't mean we're worshiping the same God. No, we are brothers actually in the literal sense, as descendants of Adam and Eve. In the literal sense, we are blood brothers. Every human being on the planet is a blood brother of the other person. So fraternity is a necessary thing. Universal fraternity. In this regard, the Holy Spirit really urged him, so he attributes to the Hope, maybe, urged him to advance with the great strides and initiatives already undertaken by previous pontiffs, especially John XXIII, the Pope of Tutti Frutti, Fratelli Tutti. Now the problem is, again, promoted both. He promoted both the ecumenical path. We're going to get to what, again, this is triggering to a lot of traditionalists, into ecumenism. But we're going to see what actually true ecumenism is, what Vatican II itself says what true ecumenism is, which is not what goes for ecumenism for the last 50 years. And interreligious dialogue. Again, here we will explain later, dialogue doesn't mean we believe what you believe. Dialogue is meaning so we can live freely in, especially in amongst each other. He did so above by cultivating interpersonal. Okay, so that's not that important. My election has taken place during the year of the 1700th anniversary of the First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea. And what really caused the final break between East and West was that the Western churches, the Roman Church, added the word from the Son, filioque, to the creed without consulting anybody. Oh, well, that's the right of the Pope. Again, the creed came about through two councils, Nicaea and Chalcedon. So for the East, or the other bishops in the world, patriarchs, are saying, how come this Roman Church decides to add to the creed by its own authority? Doesn't mean that the filioque is wrong or erroneous. It's not, because actually it was explained clearly when the Council of Florence, because it could be understood in a heretical manner, but the Church of Rome explained to the Eastern Fathers that no, this is exactly what we believe, which matches what you believe. And that's why that council actually on paper re-established communion amongst the churches, but unfortunately it didn't take hold. So this caused the break. Anyways, so the Council of Nicaea, which as well now Council of Nicaea established the date of Easter. And I did a previous video, you just search my channel, Catholic Easter or Orthodox Easter. And in it I have go over an article by a Greek Orthodox writer, published on the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, where he basically says the Catholic calculation of Easter is actually the correct calculation, much more closer to the decrees of Nicaea than the Orthodox calculation. And he basically urges that all be united in the same date, which is the correct calculation. Anyways, watch that video for more details. So hopefully we do have a united Easter date coming soon with the Council of Nicaea celebrations. And my firm hope is actually re-establishing communion amongst all the apostolic churches, Oriental and Eastern. Leo continues, that council represents a milestone in the formulation of the creed. Yeah, and that's what pissed off a lot of the Eastern Fathers. Like, you guys are just adding to the creed on your own authority. Formation of the shared by all churches and ecclesial communities, while we are in the journey to re-establishing full communion. And that's a good journey to be on. You want to re-establish full communion. Because for doctrinal, as I said previously, for extremist Catholics and extremist Orthodox. Oh, the Orthodox are heretics. No, the Catholics are heretics. The Orthodox, oh yeah, we don't believe in the Assumption of Mary. Hey, but we believe in the Dormition and she's in heaven, crowned queen. Oh, the Orthodox say, oh, we don't believe Mary was immaculate. But the cathedral in Moscow is called for the Immaculate Virgin. And all the ancient fathers called her immaculate. And your fathers called her immaculate. Oh, yeah, but... and then the Catholics will say, oh, they don't accept the Pope as the supreme pastor. Well, the Orthodox say, they're heretics, they're schismatics. But the Orthodox say, well, we're not accepting a Pope who's a dictator, who's a supremacist, who's going to rule the whole church as if there are no other patriarchs or patriarchates or... No. Actually, Vatican II says, came to mind now, and I quoted on previous videos, that the Vatican II itself says that the Pope is not, the bishops are not the employees of the Pope. The bishops of each diocese are not the vicars of the Pope of Rome. They're not the vicars of the Pope. No. They are the vicars of Christ in their diocese, which is exactly what St. Ignatius of Antioch said. So that's the reason, of course, is, okay, well, we don't want a dictator Pope who's going to tell us, who's going to change our maybe liturgical formulations, and now is again the cause of the division was all these nitpicking. The West would condemn the East for, oh, you use leavened bread, and the East would condemn the West, oh, you use unleavened bread. Okay, just shut up, you both of you guys, and just get along. You don't have to be. So both of them were trying to get not uniformity instead of variety within the truth. Okay, so let me read this part again. I know I do talk a lot, but forgive me. While we are on the journey to re-establishing full communion among all Christians, that's much easier amongst all the apostolic churches, Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox. Because, oh, they're monophysites, the Orientals. The Orientals say, no, we're not. Actually, if you read the Coptic Orthodox liturgy, it is absolutely clear in it where they declare Jesus to be fully human and fully man and fully divine, and that these two natures don't intermingle, even though they call it the one nature of the Christ or something, meaning it gives the impression that it's intermingled, but in their liturgy it is explicit that these two natures are not intermingled. Basically like the Chalcedonian Declaration, all these divisions in the past, because we're linguistic, theological viewpoints, language, things need to be worked out and fixed, because when the faith is the same but use different words to mean the same thing, let's not divide over things like that. That council represents a milestone in the formulation of the creed shared by all churches and ecclesial communities. While we are on the journey to re-establishing full communion among all Christians, we recognize that this is key. This is key to all you tradies who are freaking out. That this unity can only be unity in faith. Unity in faith. So basically unity in truth. Not unity for the sake of unity. The false ecumenism which has been prevailed in the past. Let's dumb down the Catholic faith. And that's actually in keeping with Vatican II. This unity can only be unity in faith. As Bishop of Rome, I consider one of my priorities to be that of seeking the re-establishment of full and visible communion among all who profess the same faith in God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amazing, very good, excellent. Now I'm gonna, before we continue with his speech, because we need to see what actually Vatican II's document on ecumenism, Unitatis Redintegratio, which means the restoration of unity. So it starts off like line 1. First statement is, the restoration of unity among all Christians is one of the principal concerns of the Second Vatican Council. That is a very good concern to have. Christ said there, let there be one shepherd, one flock. And a lot of these divisions amongst the apostolic churches are, if people are open to it, easy to reconcile. It continues, Christ the Lord founded one church. So Vatican II itself, it says, actually I have a thing, Vatican says the Catholic Church is the one Church of Jesus Christ. One of my older videos. I'll probably place a link to it at the end of this video. But anyways, so it says, Vatican II says, Christ the Lord founded one church and one church only. And in the council it says the Catholic Church is that one church. However, many Christian communions present themselves to men as the true inheritors of Jesus Christ. So it starts off by clearly stating, Vatican II clearly states that Christ established one and only one church, not 50 billion of them. Not the Eastern Orthodox and the Catholic Church, no, it's just one. And then the key point, which I really wanted to emphasize, in chapter 2, a section called The Practice of Ecumenism, which of course, through the spirit of Vatican II, it went exactly opposite of what Vatican II actually stated. So this is especially for traditionalists and for progressives. Because what did actually Vatican II explicitly state regarding the practice, how to practice this ecumenism thing? Number 11. The way and method in which the Catholic faith is expressed should never become an obstacle to dialogue with our brethren. So this how you express your faith shouldn't be an obstacle. So you can't go talking to people and say, hey, you're heretics, and this is heretical, and you're a schismatic, and this is a... Well, where is going to be dialogue? How can you get people to understand? Huh? St. Paul didn't go to the Romans and Greeks and tell them, you guys are you're demon worshippers, you're worshiping devils. You're like he told that to the Christians, that all the gods of the pagans are demons, are quoting the Old Testament. But Paul praised the Greeks for their religiosity and for their looking for God. This is what Paul did. So he actually approached them in the correct way. He didn't go around telling them, insulting them. They're not going to... You look at what is good, what is in common. Oh, you worship, you believe in one God. Oh, that's excellent. For example, to the Muslims. Or to the Jews. Oh, you worship one God and one God. Excellent. We too worship one God. And let's talk. He's good and merciful. Yeah, he's good and merciful. So this is how you build the way to build dialogue without, and hopefully bring them to the knowledge of the truth. So it says here, number 11, I'm going to say it again. It's just point 11. Yeah, that's the key point, which is the crux of the whole ecumenism thing. The real ecumenism, not the false one, which has prevailed for so long, unfortunately. The way and method in which the Catholic faith is expressed should never become an obstacle to dialogue with our brethren. And as I said, they are brethren by blood. And of course, those who share in the belief in the Trinity, they are brethren or baptized. As soon as you're baptized, you're technically part of the Catholic Church through baptism. But then you become a schismatic or a heretic as you grow up and adhere to the schism or adhere to the heresy. It is, of course, here's Vatican II, the liberal Vatican II. It is, of course, no question about it, essential that the doctrine should be clearly presented in its entirety. Let me read that again. It is, of course, essential that the doctrine should be clearly presented in its entirety. Basically, don't water down the Catholic faith for peace and ecumenism. No, you state the doctrine is clearly, fully, in its entirety. Nothing is so foreign to the spirit of ecumenism, that's still Vatican II, as false Irenicism. And Irenicism was condemned by, I can't remember, Pius IX or Pius XI. Again, I probably quoted it in one of the older videos on Vatican II, because that was what he called the ecumenism of his day, which was basically, let's ignore our differences and just unite as Christians. He called it for Irenicism. And Vatican II repeats that condemnation. So it says here, it is of course essential that the doctrine should be clearly presented in its entirety. Nothing is so foreign to the spirit of ecumenism as false Irenicism, in which, what is Irenicism, you ask? Vatican II tells you, in which the purity of Catholic doctrine suffers loss, and its genuine and certain meaning is clouded. When the purity of Catholic doctrine suffers loss, and its genuine, true, and certain meaning is clouded. Let's not tell these people about this. Let's cloud it down. Let's tone it down. Let's camouflage the Catholic doctrine. So we have relations and ecumenism. No, this is exactly the opposite of what Vatican II said. This is false Irenicism. And it continues, it says, at the same time, the Catholic faith must be explained more profoundly and precisely, in such a way and in such terms as our separated brethren can also really understand. That's basically what Paul did with the pagans. He quoted their own poets to explain to them Christianity. And of course, if you're talking, say, to the Eastern Orthodox and the Oriental Orthodox, you might choose to use some of their terms in explaining the doctrine, instead of using a Latinized terminology, because now we're talking two different languages. So you have to talk the same language. So this is what Vatican II says. So at the same time, the Catholic faith must be explained more profoundly, not watered down, and precisely, not vaguely, in such a way and in such terms as our separated brethren can also really understand. What's the point of this? Is to restore unity. And it continues, moreover, in ecumenical dialogue, correct ecumenism, not what goes around these days. Catholic theologians standing fast, this is key again. Moreover, in ecumenical dialogue, Catholic theologians standing fast by the teaching of the Church, and investigating the divine mysteries with the separated brethren, must proceed with love for the truth, with charity and with humility. I mean, these are the key words of Vatican II. And any objections here? Any objections to true ecumenism? Of course, what happened after the council is not true ecumenism. It is the spirit of Vatican II, which is exactly the opposite of the letter of Vatican II for the most part. What happened was false Irenicism, where Catholic doctrine is watered down, clouded, camouflaged. Let's not offend anybody. Let's talk about unity without explaining the Catholic faith precisely and fully and entirely. But this is not what Vatican II commanded. And this is basically what... So when Pope Leo talks about ecumenism, that is the perfect way to advance it, because he clearly says, Pope Leo XIV says, that this unity can only be unity in faith, not unity in anything else, in truth. Okay, so let's continue. Indeed, unity. Actually, just give me 1 second here. Oh, indeed, unity has always been a constant concern of mine. That's good. Good to know. As witnessed by the motto I chose for my episcopal ministry, in Illo Uno Unum, an expression of St. Augustine of Hippo that reminds us of how we too Although we are many, in the one that is Christ, we are one. In the one that is Christ, we are one. What is more, our communion is realized to the extent that we meet in the Lord. So we meet in the Lord Jesus. This is where communion is more real. The more faithful and obedient we are to Him, the more united we are among ourselves. We Christians, then, are all called to pray and work together to reach this goal, step by step, which is and remains the work of the Holy Spirit. Of course, it's the work of God. God wants all those who profess the apostolic faith, who have the apostolic heritage, to be united in one church with the primacy, not supremacy, of the successor of Peter. Aware, moreover, and I remember in the early church, the first councils, there were basically, let me think, 3 or 4 patriarchates. 4, I think. Jerusalem, because this is where the church was founded. Technically, the Bishop of Jerusalem was James, but Peter was the head of the apostles. He is the one who spoke at the Council of Jerusalem. And James said, listen to what Peter said. So basically, it's a Petrine see. After that, Peter went to Antioch. So that's the second patriarchate. When the Council of Nicaea mentions the patriarchates, patriarchate is number 2 is Nicaea. And is Antioch. This is where the Christians were first called followers of the way. The way were called Christians. So Christians didn't call themselves Christians. They called themselves followers of the way. And the Antiochians in Antioch in Syria told them, hey, you're Christians because you worship Christ. And the Christians said, well, we're going to take that title. We like it. So that's the second Petrine see of Peter, Antioch. So that's one of the 4 second patriarchate. The third patriarchate is Alexandria. But Alexandria, too, is a Petrine see, is a see of Peter. How? It was kind of founded by Peter, but not directly. But how? He sent Mark. Mark, his disciple, his translator, the writer of the Gospel of Mark, basically the Gospel of Peter. He sent Mark to Alexandria, who founded the church in Alexandria. So it is another Petrine see. And the fourth see, always ranked number 1, of course, is the See of Rome. When you see the ranking, like they always say Peter first and the other apostles, or Rome first and then the other apostolic sees. So it's only 4 apostolic patriarchates: Rome, Antioch, Jerusalem, and Alexandria. And of course later, because of the growth of the empire and the Eastern Empire, and for the prestige purposes, they basically added Constantinople there. But so it's the fake fifth patriarchate. So each one had its own. That's why the Bishop of Rome is called Patriarch of the West too. He had more direct, immediate authority over his patriarchate. Pope Victor I interfered in the East too, because he wanted to force them to follow the Easter dating of the Western Church and most of the other East of the Church. But the people in Ephesus and these areas refused because they were following only the custom of St. John the Apostle, and we're not going to change it. Yes, you're the successor of Peter. Yes, one of your predecessors, meaning Peter, said sometimes it's better to obey God rather than men. So they never denied the power of the Pope, but they denied his authority to alter their liturgical and disciplinary traditions, which was defended by St. Irenaeus, and basically most of the church accepted their defense. The Pope has authority universally, especially in matters of faith and morals, but it is not a dictatorial supremacy. So that has to be reestablished correctly. And then you'll have full communion, accepting people's rights. Okay. Aware, moreover. Let me see here. Oh. Aware, moreover, that synodality. Okay, here's another trigger word. Synodality. We did suffer through it, I have to admit. Walking together. We're all walking together. And I did a video on synodality. You can watch that. Aware, moreover, that synodality and ecumenism are closely linked. I would like to assure you of my intention to continue Pope Francis's commitment to promoting the synodal nature of the Catholic Church. Remember, the Catholic Church is not just the Roman Church. It is all 23 Eastern Catholic churches. And the purpose of the ecumenism part is to add to the Eastern churches all the Eastern Orthodox and the Oriental Orthodox. And that's the ecumenism part goes into here. It's not with Protestants. And developing new... Okay, I'm going to read this part again. Aware, moreover, that synodality and ecumenism are closely linked, I would like to assure you of my intention to continue Pope Francis's commitment to promoting the synodal nature of the Catholic Church and developing new and concrete forms for an ever stronger synodality in ecumenical relations. All right. Now, if you recall from my 2 videos ago when Pope Leo XIV was addressing all the Eastern Oriental Catholic churches, and he quotes actually Francis. He quotes Jorge regarding synodality. And this is a very important quote. I'm going to just repeat that quote so you understand what I'm talking about. As I said, Leo is sanitizing Francis. I would like to, this is from his talk to the Eastern churches. I would like to reaffirm the conviction of Pope Francis that the Eastern churches are to be, in quotation marks, now this is the address of Francis in 2024, 27 June. He says, reaffirm. So he ignored all the synodality previous. Leo XIV ignored all the previous synods and whatever, synodal whatever, walking together garbage. He said, I would like to reaffirm the conviction of Pope Francis that the Eastern churches are to be, now in quotation marks, cherished and esteemed for their unique spiritual and sapiential traditions that they preserve, and for all that they, the Eastern churches, have to say to us, the Roman Church, about the Christian life, synodality, and the liturgy. We think of early fathers, the councils, and monasticism inestimable treasures for the church. End of quotation marks. So basically, this is the synodality which Leo is talking about. The synodality, not the invented World Parliament of Religion synodality of Francis. No, he quotes Francis as talking to the Eastern churches in 2024 that the Roman Church needs to learn from the Eastern churches about synodality, the correct synodality. How does that work? And of course, liturgy. We did that on the liturgy one. Watch my video on the liturgy. And I mentioned it previously when the big brouhaha about synodality was going on. A Greek Catholic bishop from Greece wrote a whole article in Greek on synodality, and he says basically it is not like Eastern synods. And there's on the Catholic Register an article about it. I actually went to the Greek one, to the link, and I highlighted the whole thing, went back to Greek. So whatever I highlighted, I'm just going to So he talks about synodality as something which is primarily experienced, the fake synodality of Francis, as a space where everyone can express themselves on everything. And that's not synodality. And he says, so what synodality are we really talking about here? And when especially people say, well, you people in the East have always had synodality. But he tells them basically, our synodality, which you, Francis says we need to learn, is nothing like your fake synodality. And so he says some people confuse synodality with episcopal collegiality. He says decisions within these churches in the synodal manner are made by the assembly of bishops, almost always called synodal, or sometimes a council of hierarchs belonging to the Eastern churches. So it is the bishops, not some believers, non-believers, laymen, laywomen coming and discussing the faith and let's walk together to found the synodal church. Nothing like that. This bishop says, and the bishop is called Manuel Nin from Greece, in Greece. And he says, however, and taking up the thread from the beginning, if the West, meaning the Roman Catholic Church, understands synodality as a place or as a moment where everyone, lay and clerical, act together in order to arrive at some ecclesiastical, dogmatic, canonical, disciplinary decision, whatever it may be, it becomes clear that such synodality does not exist in the East and never did. Does not exist in the East and never did. And remember here, Leo is talking to the Eastern patriarchs as well. They're in the audience. And he quoted again Francis talking about we have to learn from the East what synodality is. And this Greek bishop continues, the word synodos comes directly from the Greek, which means I walk with. So when Francis was saying, walking together, everybody walking together, he makes clear, the bishop, I'm going to quote him, the meaning of the real object of the proposition syn for synodos, it does not refer to the process, but to someone with whom it is carried out and completed. The syn with this Greek preposition connects us Christians and leads us to the person who is Christ. So basically we're walking with Christ, not walking together. We're walking to Christ with Christ. So he continues, synodality cannot be a cover that presents us in the modern world, but also among ourselves as if we were, meaning the church, were a modern Western democracy, parliamentary perhaps, where everyone can say everything and talk about everything. No. The life of the Christian churches has never been a form of democracy in which everyone decides about everything based on majority rules. The life of Christians indeed is and has always been a conciliar journey, a journey with Him, with Christ the Lord, who is Himself the way, the truth, and the life. The monastic life in the East and the West as a model of synodality to which I referred. Guided by the gospel, by the teaching of the abbot, and by the spiritual elders, we are brothers journeying with Christ in search of God. So, guided by the gospels, by the teaching of the abbot, or the bishops in this case, and the spiritual elders, we are all brothers journeying with Christ in search of God. What then is synodality? Synod, way, so he quotes it, synod, and then way with Christ. This is the guiding thread of my reflection, without pretensions, but without ever forgetting the one, the Lord, who was, who is, and who will be the true, the only companion of all of us as members of the body, which is the church. So this is true synodality. Not what Jorge was doing previously, and this is the true synodality, which is an integral part of ecumenism because it is in the structure of the Eastern churches. That's why there is this interconnection between synodality and ecumenism. So Leo is 100% right and is 100% good. All right. Wow, it's been quite a while. I'm still talking. I thought it'd be a 15-minute video, but if you watch enough of my videos, you know I don't like just doing a 15-minute quickie one. You can always watch it over sessions, but sometimes you need to understand the full thing. I do these videos so I myself understand. I don't just do them just for fun. I don't do them for views. I do them for the benefit of me and whoever cares to watch. Let's continue. Our common path can and must also be understood in the broad sense involving everyone. In the spirit of human fraternity. Okay, this is another trigger point. Oh, human fraternity. Wow, this is the Abu Dhabi human fraternity document. Wow, bad, evil. Well, yeah, we are brothers in man, in Adam, literally. In the spirit of humor that I mentioned above. Now is the time for dialogue and building bridges. Oh, that's another trigger point. Building bridges. And I mentioned previously, pontiff, the word pontiff, means bridge builder, bridge maker. This is the function of the pontiff. And we have the supreme pontiff, the head, the chief, bridge builder. That's the Pope, Bishop of Rome, the supreme pontiff, the prime pontiff. Now is the time for dialogue. Nothing wrong with that. Because we saw when he was talking about ecumenism, and dialogue means in the truth, in the faith, in one faith, not in whatever. Now is the time for dialogue and building bridges. I am therefore pleased and grateful for the presence of representatives of other religions. Of other religious traditions. He doesn't even call them religions. Of other religious traditions who share, this is key again. You can't be superficial with these things. Who share the search for God and His will, which is always and only the will of love and life for men and women and for all creatures. So he doesn't say that they have the truth, that they have the faith. He just told you about the Trinity and unity in the Trinity, those who believe in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This is where the unity in one faith he talked about previously. So these other religious traditions are searching for God. He doesn't say they have God. They're in search for God. These traditions, the religious traditions, are in search for God and His will, which is true. They're searching. Even the Hindus who have 1 billion gods, the more intellectual Hindus will say, we believe in one God. I think in the City of God of St. Augustine, it's a humongous book. I read a portion of it, maybe a quarter of it. And he basically talks about all the various Roman gods and Greek gods and goddesses. And he says, as I recall years ago, I was reading it, that some of the schools of thought, the philosophers will say, no, we have just one God. Only one God. These are just aspects of manifestations of that one God. Same thing with some Hindus, the more intellectual, will say, oh, no, these are just manifestations of the one deity. But for the average person, no, this is a God, that's a God, this is a God. And of course, St. Augustine demolishes that theory because how can you have a God who has so many contradictions? Impossible. Anyways, but people do search. Muslims go and they think they're following God. They're searching for Him. They want to obey His decrees. They phone up their imams and their sheikhs, give us a fatwa. Tell us, is it okay to go walk out to the bathroom with my left leg, or do I have to walk out with my right leg? Am I allowed to eat with my left hand, or that's the hand where the devil eats from? so I gotta eat with my right hand. Oh, so I can't put my watch on my left hand like normal human beings, so I gotta put it on my right hand because the left hand is evil, because this is the devil's. All that, they ask all these stupid questions, all this because they want to follow God as they understand God to be in their, demonic Quran. The God who denies Jesus Christ, the God who calls Christians worse than pagans and deserving of subjugation. Yeah, so that's the God of Islam. But even they are actually searching for God. And the Judaism, what goes for Judaism, which is not true Judaism, the true religion of Moses disappeared after the temple. So-called modern Judaism or post-temple Judaism is rabbinic Judaism, following the Talmud, and more important than the scriptures, because they cannot do anything in the scriptures. They cannot follow the religion of Moses. They have no temple, no priesthood, no sacrifice, no nothing. The old covenant has been replaced by the new. As Moses himself told them, a prophet like unto me is coming to you. Listen to him. Don't listen to me anymore. Listen to him. And as Moses made a new covenant, a covenant with the Jews, with the Hebrews, with the 12 tribes, same Jesus Christ made a new covenant with the 12 apostles. And anyways, so, okay, now let's continue. You have witnessed the remarkable efforts made by Pope Francis in favor of interreligious dialogue. It's a bit too much, where he was kissing the feet of politicians, washing the feet of Muslims and those who enjoy sexual relations with the same sex. He washed their feet on Holy Thursday. Washing of the feet is traditionally in the West and in the East, the bishop, the patriarch, would wash the feet of the bishops. This is exactly the imitation of Jesus Christ, who washed the feet of the bishops, the high priests of the new covenant, the apostles. That's why Pope Peter says, if I don't wash you, you have no part in me. Jesus told Peter that. If I don't wash you, you have no part in me. So it was an ordination rite, and it was an imitation of Jesus Christ. The patriarch would wash the feet of the bishops, or the priests, or the bishop in a local diocese would wash the feet of his priests. Not of the lady, not even men, but certainly not women or pagans or Muslims or Hindus. Just got interrupted for a second, so I'm going to repeat. Maybe I repeated it already, but anyways, this is continuing with Pope Leo. Says, you have witnessed remarkable efforts of Pope Francis. Oh yeah, I talked about interreligion, bowing down to people and washing the feet of those unbelievers. So, anyways, through his words and actions, he opened new avenues of encounter to promote. Now he quotes here, that's another trigger point for traditionalists, which is understandable. He quotes the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together. Now, all the... I'm going to just read this and then... actually, I'm going to tell you now. Now, what was the problem? Why is this triggering? Oh my God, says Leo XIII just quoted the Fraternity document from Abu Dhabi. Oh my, he's following Francis's Ecumenism and heresy. No, that's not what he's doing. As I said, he's sanitizing Francis. There's nothing wrong with fraternity. There's nothing wrong with dialogue. There's nothing wrong with building bridges. This is just human decency. And why they're freaking out is, like they will take one sentence or two sentences or a paragraph of the massive Vatican II and call the whole council heretical. They will do the same with that document. The only complaint, which is a valid and true complaint, which is not a complaint, it's obvious heresy and error. In that document, Francis Jorge Bergoglio, who believed in not a Christian God. He said, I don't believe in a Catholic God. He told Eugenio Scalfari, watch my videos to Eugenio Scalfari and Francis. He said, Scalfari specifically said, like Francis believes in this unique God. Everybody believes in that, like the whole planet, every religion believes in that unique one God. This is Francis's idea. So what happened in this document? It is written that what Francis signed to it is that God, I don't have the exact words in front of my face right now, but basically God willed, as God willed the diversity of sexes, males and females, as he willed all of creation, sun and moon and stars. He willed the diversity of religions. That God himself willed Islam. That God himself willed Hinduism. That God himself willed Satanism. That God himself willed the Aztec slaughter of the innocents religion. That was God willed the diversity of religions. That is not only false, it is evil. God did not positively will, a religion which calls his only begotten Son, a mere creature, a mere prophet. And anybody who calls him God needs to be eliminated or subjugated. Did God will that religion? Did God will the worship of demons and have babies slaughtered for them in sacrifice? Did God will the worship of Moloch? Did God will the worship of Zeus and Diana and the various gods and goddesses? Did God will these? Even in India, I think it was only the British, when they invaded India and took over, that they stopped human sacrifice. The human sacrifice was still a worshipful act to their gods. And did God will that? Obviously not. This is blasphemy. So we got that part out of the way. That was the key. And then Bishop Schneider went to Rome, and this is the permissive will of God or the active will of God and all this garbage. No, it is clear. It just says, like God made man and woman, God made these religions. And this is perfectly, because I grew up in the Middle East, so this is perfectly exactly what Muslims believe. God willed all these religions. So Francis was basically parroting Muslim beliefs. Yeah, God made you a Christian. God made you a Muslim. Like they would say, okay, well, he was born a Muslim. Look, what made him a Muslim? Did he get baptized or how did... No, it's just like a genetic thing. It's a magic thing. When you converted, all your kids automatically are Muslims. Just, God made you that way. You were born a Muslim, so you're born a Christian. So this is what is stated in Egypt and other places. And he signed that document with Sheikh al-Azhar, al-Tayyib, the Sheikh of al-Azhar, al-Tayyib. So again, Leo doesn't quote that part of the document. Doesn't say, well, God willed your religion, your false religions here. God willed them, like he willed human beings, like he willed the sun and the moon, like he willed the oceans. No, he doesn't say that. He just picks what is good for dialogue. So he quotes it. He says, the culture of dialogue as the path, mutual collaboration as the code of conduct, reciprocal, not one way, understanding as the method and standard. So he quotes a good part. What's wrong with that? Absolutely nothing. And then he says, I thank the dicastery for interreligious dialogue for the essential role it plays in the in this patient work of encouraging meetings and concrete exchanges, and what are these meetings? What are these exchanges meant for? What are they good for? They're aimed at building relationships based on human fraternity. We're not talking about religions here. We're not talking about religions, your religion's good and your religion. No. It's just human fraternity. Human decency. Don't treat Christians like crap, basically. And then he continues. Now here's another part where it's going to quote Vatican II and all the tradies. The superficial traditionalists who probably never ever read the whole Vatican II documents, all of them. Not once, twice. Not even, I'll bet you nobody, 95% didn't even read them once. Fully. Not just taking a quote here and there. Or reading a book about Vatican II and taking quotations. Anyways, this is the other trigger point. He talks about Judaism and Muslims. Nostra Aetate, the document of Vatican II. In a special way, I greet our Jewish and Muslim brothers and sisters. And they are brothers and sisters, how? Because they are the sons of Adam and Eve. They are brothers and sisters. And of course, we have Judaism. Anyways, let's not get into it. Like, honestly, most modern day Jews don't have any... They're Europeans. They're not Middle Easterns. Like if you in the 40s and 30s in Egypt, the Jews in Egypt looked exactly like the Egyptians. Slightly different, like maybe the Syrians would look a bit different than the Egyptians. But they were Middle Eastern, clearly. They're not like blonde with blue eyes and they're Jewish. Because now we're talking about a race of people, not a religion. A religion is a different story. In a special way, I greet our Jewish and Muslim brothers and sisters, and they are brothers and sisters because all of humanity are brothers and sisters. I can say my Hindu brother and sister, even my Satanist brother and sister, as a human being, as a descendant of Adam and Eve, not intellectually and not religiously. Because of the Jewish roots of Christianity, I have a couple of reviews on I think it's called, I can't remember the video. I have several videos on the Judaism section of my channel. Several videos on Judaism, how the Christ is the Jew. It is like fascinating because the ancient Jewish roots of Christianity, not the modern rabbinic, Talmudic Jewish roots of Christianity, that didn't exist. The Jewish roots of Christianity are the roots found in the Old Testament and Mosaic law and the prophets, not in the Talmud and the Pharisaic post-temple Judaism. So in a special way, I greet our Jewish and Muslim brothers and sisters because the Jewish roots of Christianity, all Christians have a special relationship with Judaism. Not modern day Judaism, but ancient Judaism. The Conciliar Declaration Nostra Aetate, boo, 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 boo. Traditionals' heads are bursting. Their eyes are bulging out. Flames are going out of their ears. Nostra Aetate Vatican II number 4. I'm going to look at it, but anyways, let's see what Leo says. Emphasizes the greatness of the spiritual heritage shared by Christians and Jews. Nothing wrong with that. Encouraging the mutual knowledge and esteem. The theological dialogue between Christians and Jews remains ever important and close to my heart. Theological dialogue, but that's never going to... Even in these difficult times, marked by conflicts and misunderstandings, it is necessary to continue the momentum of this precious dialogue of ours. Again, what's the point of the dialogue? He just said it in the previous paragraph. It is aimed at building a relationship based on human fraternity. That's it. That's the aim of the dialogue. And just looking at Nostra Aetate on number 4. Number 4. And this is, again, key. That's Vatican II, which, again, 95% of all Catholics never even read. And 95% of traditionalists who criticize it all the time never really read. Here is what it says in number 4. I'm not going to go through. I'm just going to go section in number 4. Although, now talking about Jews, but it says here in section 4, although the church is the new people of God, which has actually been repeated by Leo XIV. His first address, I think, to the cardinals. He said, we are the people of God. We are the people of God. Vatican II says, when it's talking about the Jews, it's talking in Nostra Aetate. Although the church is the new people of God. Therefore, the Jews are not the people of God anymore. They used to be. But they're no longer the people of God. The only people of God are those who accepted the Mashiach, the Messiah, the Son of Man, the new covenant, which fulfilled the old covenant, which continued the people of God. So although the church is the new people of God, it says the Jews should not be presented as rejected and accursed by God. Because actually, Paul himself says that in the end, a remnant will be saved. And actually, God doesn't... what happened after the crucifixion when he said, his blood is on us and our children, they just suffered the consequences, which was what? No longer being the people of God. Being separated from God. So it is clear. Vatican II says clearly, the church is the new people of God. That's number 4 in Nostra Aetate. And then it continues. Besides, as the church has always held and holds now. That's Vatican II, listen. Besides, as the church has always held and holds now, Christ underwent his passion and death freely. It's true. Nobody, he said, I could bring a legion of angels to defend me, Jesus said. I don't need you, Peter, with your sword. I can have a legion of angels. So I'm laying my life by myself. Because of this, so Christ underwent his passion and death freely because of the sins of men and out of infinite love, in order that all may reach salvation, including the Jews. It is therefore the burden of the church's preaching to proclaim the cross of Christ as the sign of God's all-embracing love and as the fountain from which every grace flows. This is quoting it, Nostra Aetate to the Jews, on section 4 of Nostra Aetate. So, going back to what he said about the point of these dialogues is fraternal relations, and let me just get you exact words again. Aimed at building a relationship based on fraternity. Again, Nostra Aetate, the last paragraph quotes actually St. Peter. Says, basically Christian faithful are, quoting Peter, 1 Peter 2:12, maintain good fellowship among the nations, and if possible to live for their part in peace with all men. so that they may truly be the sons of the Father who is in heaven. So we have to maintain good relationship with the old, building bridges for human fraternity. 1 Peter 2, 12, 14, and 15. So that, of course, shouldn't freak you up and say, wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty amazing. We're almost done. We're now into the, another Nostra Aetate on the Muslims and worship. They worship the same God like us. Oh, heresy. Vatican II heresy. No. No. It is vague. I'll admit it. It is a bit vague, but when you talk Nostra Aetate is a bit vague, but Lumen Gentium makes what Nostra Aetate is clear, exactly what is meant, which is basically what Cardinal Ratzinger said. You got to take all of Vatican II together. And plus, Vatican II is not a dogmatic council, as he himself said. It's a merely pastoral council that defined no dogma. But is it binding? I guess, I don't know how, but whatever. Now he continues. Relations between the Catholic Church. And this is actually quite key. Look at the wording. Leo XIV is very smart. Very smart. Just look at his education and his many languages he speaks. He's not an idiot. Relations between the Catholic Church and Muslims. Not Islam, not the religion of Islam, but Muslims. Muslims. It's written Muslims. The Catholic Church, relations between the Catholic Church and these people who call themselves Muslims, have been marked by a growing commitment to dialogue and fraternity. But unfortunately, it's not really reciprocal. You have the heads doing that, but the people and the lower sheikhs, the persecution of Christians continues throughout the Middle East. Relations between the Catholic Church and Muslims have been marked by a growing commitment to dialogue and fraternity, fostered by esteem for these our brothers and sisters, who, now he will quote Vatican II, which quotes a Pope. Let me see. Actually, I'm going to get it to you now. I think Pope Gregory XII, his letter to Anzir Nasser, King of Mauritania. So he quotes, Vatican II quoted that one, which Leo is quoting back. And in my video, I can't remember which one now. One of the Vatican II ones, or about Muslims, I had to search far and wide to find this letter. It was very hard to find. But in the story is that this prince, this Islamic prince, Muslim prince, had these hostages. So Gregory XII is telling him basically what this prince believes. We appreciate, like he's being diplomatic. You worship God. The one and living. And so this is a quote. It doesn't mean he worshipped the true God. Doesn't mean he worships the Trinity. No. So he says again, relations between the Catholic Church and Muslims have been marked by a growing commitment to dialogue and fraternity, fostered by esteem for these our brothers and sisters who, quotation marks now, quoting it again, Gregory XII to this Islamic prince, which was quoted at Vatican II, who worship God. Worship God, who is one, living and subsistent, merciful and almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, who has also spoken to humanity. This is perfectly explanation of what Muslims themselves say they worship. Yeah, we worship God. We worship the one living and subsistent, merciful and almighty. Allah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allah, the merciful, the most merciful, the almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, who has also spoken to humanity, because they'll say, oh yeah, he spoke to the prophets, to us through the prophets. Even Isa, Jesus the prophet, he spoke to us through Jesus. And of course, I'll add that Muhammad as the last of the prophets. That's the quotation. And then he says, this approach based on mutual respect and freedom of conscience, because our consciences need to be free, even for a Catholic. The coerced conscience is not a free conscience. To accept God, you have to have a free conscience. Is a solid foundation for, what is again this point of this talking to the Muslims, not to the Islam as a religion, is a solid, based on mutual respect and freedom of conscience. So you have to have mutual respect and freedom of conscience. Is a solid foundation for building bridges between our communities. Yeah, you don't want to have conflict. There is enough conflict. But again, if there is freedom of conscience, then there's freedom to preach the gospel to the Muslims. Now I'm going to go to Nostra Aetate again, because that's a quotation from Nostra Aetate number 3. And remember, I'm not sure if I quoted it, actually. Nostra Aetate, line 1. I don't think I quoted this. If I did, forgive me, I just forgot. So anyways, Nostra Aetate, number 1, the Declaration of the Relations of the Church to Non-Christian Religions, Nostra Aetate, proclaimed by Paul VI in October 28, 65. In her task of promoting unity and love among men, indeed among nations, she, the Catholic Church, considers above all in this declaration what men, so what's the point of this Nostra Aetate? What is being highlighted? What men have in common and what draws them to fellowship. So when it talks to Muslims about worshiping God, who's one, who's creator of heaven and earth, this is what we have in common. Doesn't mean we have the same common God, but this is the common belief. Like Paul told the Greeks, you worship the unknown God. You worship the God I'm telling you about. Okay. This is still Nostra Aetate at the beginning, the introduction. One is the community of all peoples, one, their origin, one for God. One is the community of all peoples, one their origin, for God made the whole human race to live over the face of the earth. One also is their final goal, God. This is the final goal of all humanity. That's why we want to bring them to the truth. His providence, his manifestations of goodness, his saving design extend to all men. Not that all men will accept it, but his design extend to all men. Like he wants all men to be saved. Doesn't mean that all men will be saved. Until that time when the elect will be united to the holy city. The city ablaze with the glory of God, where all nations will walk in his light. So again, basically he says, God's saving design extend to all men until that time as when the elect, will be united in the holy city, the heavenly Jerusalem. The elect, chosen from all eternity. This is in the Roman canon. It says we're praying God that we are found to be among the elect, because we don't know. Till the last moment we could die and be lost. So we pray that we are members of the elect. So this is the okay. So This quotation, as I said, was from St. Gregory XII to Anzir, letter 21. I had a tremendously difficult time finding it, but it is in one of my previous videos, early videos, on the subject. Shows you that he wasn't telling this prince, the Muslim prince, you worship the Trinity, you worship the true God like us. No, you worship the same God as us. No, but you worship one God who is living and true and subsists, like it's spoken here. So I'm going to read the full section from Nostra Aetate. Number 3. The Church regards with esteem also the Muslims. Not Islam as such, not the fake false religion. No, the people, the Muslims. They, again, it's quoting now this Gregory XII, they adore the one God. And the word for it is unicum Deum adorant. Unicum Deum adorant. And unicum means, it comes from Latin, unicus, meaning sole, single, unique. They worship the sole, single, unique God. This is basically what it says. Which is, as I said, that's exactly what they'll try. In their creed, the Muslim creed of such thing exists, they'll say, it's in their Quran, it's like, he's the one, he doesn't have a son, he doesn't have a wife, he's the one and only. El-Wahid Ahad. The one and only unique sole God. So, as I said, and what did at the beginning of this document say? The number 1, section 1, it says, this document is talking about, this declaration, about what men have in common. What men have in common, and draws them to fellowship. So Muslims, they, the Church regards with esteem the Muslims, the people. They adore the one God, living and subsisting in himself, merciful and all powerful, the creator of heaven and earth, which is a quotation from Gregory XII to this prince who's had Christian hostages, who has spoken to men. Yes. Now, they, meaning Muslims, take pains to submit wholeheartedly to even his inscrutable decrees. He's not talking about the scriptures here in Vatican II. They're talking about, Vatican II is talking about his inscrutable decrees as found in the Quran and the Hadiths. Just as Abraham, because that's exactly what Muslims say, with whom the faith of Islam takes pleasure. So, not the Church says that. Not the Catholic Church says that. It's the faith of Islam takes pleasure in linking itself submitted to God. So basically, we have esteem for you Muslims, they adore the one God, living, subsisting himself, creator of heaven and earth, who spoke to man, and they take really pains to follow his inscrutable decrees. I gotta eat with my right hand because the left is the devil's hand. It's like very inscrutable decrees. I gotta go around the Kaaba and throw stones at the devil. Just as Abraham, with whom the faith of Islam takes pleasure in linking itself, submitted to the God. So this is what the Muslims truly do. They submit, they link their faith to Abraham, to Jews, and to Christians. But they say, we have the pure faith. We worship the God which you Christians have perverted and created partners to him. And the Trinity taught in the Quran is God, Allah, Isa, their name for Jesus, and Mary, the mother of Jesus. This is the divine Quran's understanding of the Trinity, that Christians worship Allah, God, Jesus, and Mary. That's the Christian Trinity according to the Quran. It shows you how inspired it is. And of course, traditionalists are going to freak, and we're going to freak out, and even actually progressives non-Catholics will say, whoa, Vatican II clearly says that we worship the same God. Muslims and Christians worship the same God. How could this be? How can this be? First of all, we worship the Trinity. They absolutely reject the Trinity. We worship Jesus as God. They call this worse than paganism. So obviously, logically, we do not worship the same God. So now let's go to another document, Vatican II, Lumen Gentium, Dogmatic Constitution of the Church, Lumen Gentium, from 1964. And the Mystery of the Church, Chapter 1. Number 1, before we get to the section on the Muslims. Christ is the light of nations. That's Vatican II. Because Christ is the light of nations, this sacred synod gathered together in the Holy Spirit eagerly desires, by proclaiming the gospel to every creature. Vatican II, can you believe it, boys and girls? Proclaiming the gospel to every creature. To bring the light of Christ to all men, Muslims and Jews, and all men. A light brightly visible on the countenance of the church. That's the first sentence of Lumen Gentium. Okay, so when it talks to the Muslims, the whole point of this is to bring the light of Christ, to bring the gospel, to preach them the truth. So number 16 on the Muslims, it says, I think this is the only section anyways. All right. So number 16, which a lot of traditionalists quote. Oh, look, Vatican II says we all worship the same God. And the progressives, modernists say, oh, Vatican II says we worship the same God. You just heard it. The council, first of all, is promoting what is in common. Second of all, Christ is the light, and we have to bring that to all nations. So number 16. So remember, actually, I'm going to, because this is linked. Everything is linked. What show is that? Everything is connected. Everything is connected. That TV show about the airplane which goes back in time and whatever. Anyways. I'm going to read section 1 quickly and then go to the section 16 on the Muslims. Now we're running it. Christ is the light of nations. Because this is so, this sacred synod gathering together in the Holy Spirit eagerly desires, by proclaiming the gospel to every creature, to bring the light of Christ to all men, a light brightly visible on the countenance of the church. And immediately on number 16, finally, those who have not yet received the gospel are related in various ways to the people of God. So the whole point of this document, the whole council, is to bring the gospel. So now he's going to talk to Muslims who have not yet received the gospel. So what is the function of Vatican II? Is to bring the gospel to the Muslims. And it says, and who is the people of God? The church. The council itself said the church is the new people of God. And it's repeated here. So those who have not yet received the gospel are related in various ways to the people of God, which at the Nostra said, I think, the church is the new people of God. So, of course, it talks about the Jewish people, because it is where Christ took his flesh from them and the fathers. So that's no problem. And then, in the first place amongst these are the Muslims, who, listen to this is the key. And this goes, again, Vatican II is not like one section, one line. No, everything is interconnected. Lumen Gentium and Nostra Aetate, they're talking about the exact same thing. In the first place, among these are the Muslims, who professing to hold the faith of Abraham. So who's professing to hold the faith of Abraham? It's the Muslims, not the church saying that they profess the faith of Abraham. It's not Vatican II saying Muslims profess the faith of Abraham. No, it is the Muslims they profess to hold it. The Muslims who professing to hold the faith of Abraham, along with us, adore the one and merciful God, who on the last day will judge mankind. And the same story goes in the Latin that nobiscum Deum adorant unicum, that with us they adore the unique sole God. But the key here is, we're not saying that. The Catholic Church is not saying that they hold the faith of Abraham. The Catholic Church is not saying that they actually worship the true God. No. The Muslims who professing to hold the faith of Abraham, who professing to, along with us, adore the one and merciful God, who on the last day will judge mankind. This is what it is. This is exactly what Muslims profess to hold. Muslims profess to hold the faith of Abraham. They profess to hold the faith of Moses. They profess to hold the faith of Jesus Christ. And they profess to hold that they adore the same God as us, the same God as the Jews, the God of the Injil and the Torah, the Taurat and the Injil, the Torah and the Gospels, and the Gospel. But we are the mushrikeen. We made other gods with God. But this is absolutely true. So there is no error, there is no deception, there is no nothing in Vatican II here. It is clear because it's highlighting what's in common. And it tells you we're going to bring the gospel to those who don't have the gospel. And number 16 is for those who haven't yet received the gospel. First of these, amongst them, the Muslims, who the Muslims profess to hold. They professing to hold the faith of Abraham. And they themselves actually say, along with us, it says, see, this is the bit of a vague thing. Along with us adore the one merciful God, who on the last day will judge mankind. But this is exactly what the Muslims themselves profess to hold. Because why would we need to bring them the gospel if they have the same faith as us? Doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't. And it clearly says they don't have the gospel because they have not yet received it. So obviously they do not have the faith. So there's nothing wrong with this at all. Nothing heretical or evil. It didn't say they believe in the Trinity and the divinity of Christ and any of that stuff. And then he finishes up, Pope Leo, back to Pope Leo's thing. Oh, actually, I'm just going to read it. I'll finish it up. To all of you, representatives of other religious traditions, doesn't even call them religious traditions, I express my gratitude for your participation in this meeting and for your contribution to peace. In a world wounded by violence and conflict, each of the communities represented here brings its own contribution of wisdom, compassion, and commitment, not faith, to the good of humanity and the preservation of our common home, the earth. Otherwise, you'd have a scorched earth. I'm convinced that if we are in agreement and free from ideological and political conditioning, we can be effective in saying no to war and yes to peace, no to arms race and yes to disarmament, no to an economy. Look how much money the new U.S. budget, trillions of dollars on the military. And then you're going into debt and amongst debt. No, it's a waste of money. No to an economy that impoverishes people and the earth, and yes to the integral development. Yeah, you want true God made us stewards of the earth, stewards of his creation, guardian of his creation, not its destroyer, but its preserver and cultivator. Not, of course, environmental worship of the environment, Mother Earth. He doesn't say any of that Mother Earth garbage like Francis did. The witness of our fraternity, meaning our brotherhood as human beings, which I hope we will be able to show with effective gestures, meaning don't persecute us, be nice to us, Christians in the Middle East and the rest of the world in Asia, will certainly contribute to building a more peaceful world, something that all men and women of good will desire in their hearts. A peaceful world, who doesn't want that? Dear friends, thank you again for your closeness. Let us ask for God's blessing in our hearts. May His infinite goodness and wisdom help us to live as His children and as brothers and sisters to each other, so that hope may grow in the world. I offer you my heartfelt gratitude. And remember, Pope Leo gave his apostolic blessing to the reporters, who many of them are non-Christians, when he met the media. He does it in every public audience with Christians and non-Christians. Unlike Francis, who told the media, I don't want to offend you guys. Each one pray to his God by themselves. I don't want to offend you. A magnificent presentation of the Catholic faith by the successor of Peter. Nothing to be triggered about, nothing to freak out about. And I will just end it here with the quotations. Both of them from St. Paul. One is from his letter to the Romans, chapter 2, verse 13. For it is not the hearers of the law who are righteous before God, but the doers of the law who will be justified. When Gentiles, meaning when pagans, worshippers of idols, who have not the law, do by nature what the law requires, they are law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that what the law requires is written on their hearts. So even pagans have the law. When they do the right thing, they have the law written on their hearts. This is where the conscience comes in. The conscience pangs you, so tells you, oh, this is wrong, this is right. Where does that come from? From God. And in his letter to, in the book of Acts, chapter 17, Paul, being so ecumenical, so Vatican II, actually praises pagans for being religious. Oh my God! He has defected from the faith. Paul. Okay, let's see. And so this is Acts 17, verse 16. Now while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. So interiorly, he was very angry to see idols everywhere, worship of demons everywhere. But how did he react? How did he to deal with those he wants to build fraternal relationship with, building bridges and dialogue so they might come to the knowledge of the truth? Verse 22. So Paul, standing in the middle of the Areopagus, said, Men of Athens, I perceive, I see that in every way you are very religious. Imagine if Pope Leo said, you Muslims are very religious. You Hindus are so religious. The Tradisphere, the protectors of the true faith, would explode and calling Leo a heretic. Wouldn't they? And of course, on the other side, the real heretics would explode and say, well, see, we're all worshipping the same God. There's no such thing. See, pagans are very religious. The Pope said so. Let's not be so preachy in evangelization, because that's proselytism. That's against human dignity, as Francis said. So this is straight quotations from St. Paul. Says, "Men of Athens, I perceive, I see that in every way you are very religious, even though interiorly he knows they are worshipping the false gods." But he doesn't tell them that to their face. In this section anyways. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. So Paul says, what therefore you worship as unknown. So he actually tells them that they actually worship the true God as unknown. So one might say even invincibly ignorant Muslims worship the real God, but an unknown to them. They think they are worshiping, but let's not delve into these hypotheticals now. But Paul here specifically says to the pagan Greeks, what therefore you worship as unknown. So they worship as unknown. This I proclaim to you. So this is the function of the church. Like it says in Lumen Gentium, that to bring the light of the gospel to those who have not yet received the gospel, like the Muslims. And the Hindus and the Buddhists and everybody else. So whenever in Vatican II talks about what the Buddhists believe and what the Hindus believe and what whoever believes, it is basically not saying what the church believes is correct. It is simply stating what their beliefs are. Not what the church thinks they are as true. It says what they believe. St. Paul says, what therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it is being Lord of heaven and earth, blood, etc. And then, verse 26, and he made from one every nation. So this is what I was saying, fraternity. Because God made from one every nation of men to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their habitations, that they, men, should seek God in the hope that they might feel after him and find him. Yet he is not far from each one of us. So this is basically what Pope Leo was saying about, this is the instinct, I can't remember the exact words now, of people seeking God or seeking God, seeking truth. St. Paul says it himself in Acts 17, that God created this in the heart of man, that they should seek God and hope that they might feel after him and find him. Yet he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As even some of your poets have said, and one website actually gave us the identity of that poet. I closed the site, I think. One of your poets said, so Paul, the apostle, Saul, who became Saint Paul, the greatest spreader of the gospel in history, quotes the pagan poets. He takes authority. So a Catholic might quote the Quran about some things which are good. He may quote a philosopher of whatever, a Hindu, to bring them to the knowledge of one God, not 50 billion gods. So even, he says, St. Paul says, as even some of your poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. For we are indeed his offspring. And Pope Leo, at the end of his declaration, says, because help us live as his children. This is exactly what the children of God. So St. Paul quotes a pagan poet that we are indeed his offspring. So this, as I said, was a great and very Catholic, very nuanced, very smart, very eloquent speech by Pope Leo XIV. So I hope this long video is gonna help traditional Catholics or Catholics of goodwill not to get triggered by words like synodality, fraternity, ecumenism, dialogue, building bridges, the synodal way, and all that. Because if understood in context and exactly what it means, it is perfect. And thank God for Pope Leo XIV. And I'm finally feeling good after 12 years of ranting and raving against every error and action of Francis, which has broken the hearts of Catholics, caused us to become rejectors of the papacy almost. Because if that's the papacy, who wants it? What's it good for? Absolutely nothing. Actually, the lack of it would be better if Francis was the standard of the popes. But no, we're back. We have Leo XIV. There are no longer two popes sharing the expanded Petrine office, as Gounswine said, one contemplative and one active. We don't have two popes, one dressed in white and two dressed in white, and both living in the Vatican. And no, none of that confusion anymore. We have one pope only. But again, let's not make the Pope the Church and the Church the Pope. He is, as Leo XIV said, the Pope is not an autocrat. He is a servant of your faith. As Benedict XVI, the Pope is not an absolute monarch whose will is law. No, he's bound to truth. So all I can say is glad we have Leo XIV. Let's not be Pope worshippers, not hang our whole faith on every single word, even uttered in passing by, or a tweet, or an ex-post by Pope Leo or thing, and then we start nitpicking everything. No, just calm down, relax, take a chill pill, chillax, as they used to say in the 80s or 90s, and be glad, because we finally have a single pope. Because as in the show Highlander used to say, there can only be one. That's it, that's all. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, and share, and comment at the bottom. Tell me I don't understand Vatican II. I don't understand the heresies in the council. And anyways, yeah, like it, subscribe, and share, and be patient and watch the whole video. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.